That's good.
Okay. So, just to start off our discussion, of course, we're talking about my country, Lebanon, and throughout this discussion, and you looked at my website and everything like that for the developing world. So I just want to start off by talking a little bit about globalization, and you read a little bit about that on the website and everything like that. But kind of where I got some of the stuff I got from for globalization was from this TED Talk I watched by Thomas Friedman, and he's a man who wrote a book on globalization, and he gave globalization like 3 different levels. And so I just want to go over a few of those. Globalization 1.0 is the area of globalization that was spearheaded more by like countries globalizing. So that was like back in 1492 when Columbus, of course, went out and started exploring and things like that. That's kind of when it began. It was spearheaded by people were able to go global through their countries. So their countries were going out and exploring and stuff like that. And so that's how the world started that phase of globalization. Then it moved on to globalization 2.0, which that area of globalization was spearheaded more by like companies. And so you, as an individual, were able to go to globalize through your company, through your business, things like that, business working with other businesses globally around the world and stuff. And so that's how that kind of era of globalization came about. And then globalization 3.0, which I would say would be the globalization era that we're in right now, in the United States at least, is where is more spearheaded by individuals. And so that means like individuals are reaching out via social media and the internet and things like that, and really globalizing it on their own individually, obviously. And so for Lebanon, as I talked about my website and stuff like that, I think Lebanon is, in some parts, definitely 3.0. There's different, like Beirut is the capital city of Lebanon, and they are very modernized and stuff like that. France occupied them quite a while ago. They were the last country to occupy Lebanon, and so there's a lot of European influence and stuff like that. And so Lebanon's really kept up with some with the modernization that like Europe has and stuff. So, but then there's also parts like rural areas and stuff like that that are a little bit more 2.0, even maybe 1.0, borderline 1.0, where they're not as connected and stuff like that. What's your take, I guess, on globalization and things like that?
I just think globalization, I mean, it's a real thing, obviously, like, we can't deny that. But, you know, just the whole concept of where we are now compared to where we were back in Columbus's time, you know, if you look at it, like you said, the years that are shown for globalization, like from 1 to 2 is like 14, then to the 1400s to like the 1800s.
Totally.
And then for 2.0 to 3.0 is from like the early 1900s till about the year 2000, you know. So it's about these 100-year cycles, but I feel like now with 3.0, like it's really speeding up, and like you're seeing a lot of progress in how countries are globalized.
Totally, yeah. And like 3.0 isn't the end or whatever. Yeah. Like, of course, we're continuing to progress and stuff like that, and kind of trying to get an idea of what maybe 4.0 might look like. And I don't know, that's kind of a complicated idea. Of course, it's very individualized now, and I think it will continue to just progress that way with language barriers and things like that. There was a video I watched on TED Talks as well about Skype and stuff being able to like translate while you're talking to somebody in a different language and stuff like that. So there's just really a lot of cool technologies and things that are helping us progress globally through globalization and things like that. Going along with that, and on one section of my website, there's also the Millennium Development Goals section. I know you read about that a little bit. And something that I noticed as I studied Lebanon and stuff like that was just how important these development goals really were, because they really gave us something to shoot for and gave us the opportunity to really progress and to try to reach those goals and stuff like that. One that particularly inspired me, I guess, it was the I believe it was the third Millennium Development Goal that talked about promoting gender equality and empowering women. And that's something that's really been evident in Lebanon over the past years and stuff since that goal was established. Women really feel that they have a say, that they have the ability to open their mouths and to talk. And yeah, it's just really cool. What were your take, I guess, on the Millennium Development Goals and stuff like that, and what inspired you about those?
So I took the class a couple years ago, and my country that I looked at was the Philippines. But it's just interesting to see the difference between the countries and like their progress in the development goals. But there's a lot of like widespread like things that are happening a lot now, and one of those things like you're talking about is just women being more empowered in these countries, and like your website mentions, like women are getting more power in government. They're getting more places as judges and stuff like that. And another one that I thought was interesting that it talked about in the Millennium Development Goals was about the mortality rate in childbirths.
Oh, yeah.
And just like the number of children that are actually surviving, and just the numbers that Lebanon's been able to improve for the amount of children that survive in births is amazing. They went from, I think it was like 30 deaths per thousand to like right. 7 or something like that, so, and that's just in a matter of like 10 years. So just like the healthcare is improving a lot also, and that's really evident with the Millennial Development Goals that you put on your website.
Definitely, yeah. It is really inspiring. I think just one other thing, I guess, going along with that, with the women and children and stuff like that, I think that's a big focus on many levels. One thing, and I've talked to you about this before, that we have been given this semester was our development dollar, where we were challenged to find where it would be best used in our country. And as I've been studying Lebanon and stuff a lot, something that I really noticed was the refugee situation there. And as you learned from my website and as we've talked and stuff, Syria is engaged in this war and everything. And there's a lot of people over there that are very unsafe and their lives are in danger and stuff. And so they're fleeing to Lebanon for refuge. And they actually now have over 1 million refugees there. And it's something that their country is really struggling to do their best to accommodate these people. And so I found this website. It's called mercycorps.org. And it's a website that has a charity that you can donate to help these refugees. And some things they do, of course, I guess the normal stuff like distribute clothes and blankets and find shelter and stuff for these people. Another thing that I really like that their charity does is to they have a children and youth program where they're leading programs that help children process trauma and help them integrate into their new host communities. So it just helps them to, they've seen a lot of this like horrible disasters. Many of these children and stuff have lost family members, parents, and stuff like that. So to really help them be able to cope, I guess. And so that's something that really inspired me. And I know it's just $1, but I think it's something that really brings awareness. What are your thoughts of the development dollar? Have you learned a little bit about Lebanon through my website and stuff like that?
I think definitely the idea of donating to something like, what was the name of the?
Mercy Corps.
The Mercy Corps. I think donating to something like that's going to help the women and especially the children and their growth is really good. Because one thing through reading your website and just past experiences with developing countries, a lot of like the development goals that I've noticed are geared a lot towards the children and women and improving their health care and their education and their lives, making them better. And with a lot of the refugees and people in Lebanon that are struggling, it's a lot
Yeah.
of times more the women and children. And with donating that dollar, you're helping the education. And like you always hear with the charity donations, of for every dollar, it's 5 meals or whatever,
It's true.
So even though it's like, oh, it's just a dollar, but that dollar can go to save 5 starving people that may not know where their next meal is coming from.
Yeah.
And it can help prolong their life to where they get the chance to go out and make a difference in not only Lebanon but the world.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I just think it's inspiring what we can do with so little, especially with all the privilege and stuff that we've been given. And kind of just going along with that as well, one thing that we were asked to think about was what direction we wanted the next U.S. president to take on global development for the U.S. And as I was thinking about that, something I thought about that I thought that could be really beneficial was just educating our youth and our children at younger ages, like through our school systems, implementing programs where youth are more aware of like these development goals that we have as a nation, and more aware of what's going on globally around the world and stuff. I know growing up, I never knew about these Millennium Development Goals until I took this class. And part of it could be, that I maybe wasn't as news conscious and things like that, and maybe didn't proactively take initiative to like learn more and stuff like that. But definitely, I think if I was more aware, I think I would approach life and approach situations differently. I think just awareness is the key. And going along with that a little bit, we talked about, or I've talked about before with you, the different perspectives and stuff that we take in the class, in my developing world classes. We talk about different situations and issues and stuff. And so, growing up as a child and as a member of the church and stuff, I always had the understanding that I was a part of a bigger picture, just this one person, part of a bigger, like Heavenly Father's plan and stuff like that. But I think that concept and that idea goes even further as we are able to become more globally minded. And I think that implementing those programs and stuff, if the U.S. president, next U.S. president, able to do that, I think is really important. And I guess it's kind of like the celestial perspective. But what are your thoughts on what you would like to see as far as development goes and the U.S. and like what direction they take?
Kind of same thing as you. I know in the development goals they have another set of goals that they're working on in the future, and a lot of those I feel like, are geared not just towards a lot of the developing countries, but geared more towards getting like the United States and other developed countries more involved in these goals, as opposed to just helping these developing countries. These goals are more geared towards helping us help ourselves and being an example and helping everyone else. And I think that's going to be great for the younger generation and even at our age, as we understand these goals and understand how to better our country, we're going to be able to better everyone else. And then I just think, like you're talking about, the president, whoever's next or in the country, whoever they are, just getting it into the minds of people at an earlier age and not when we're 25, 26,
Right.
And I think that'll be very beneficial. And just what you were talking about also with just us being like members of the church being a part of a small picture, but it's really a big picture as members of the church, because the church is the same everywhere. And I think an example of how even just how the world is globalizing and how it's taking after, just like when we were on our vacation in Tahiti, that's kind of a developing country,
Yeah, totally.
A lot of it's very primitive. A lot of it's, whenever we were on Moorea, we went to church there, it's the exact same there as it was here. Whenever we were at the hotels there, it was the same as it was on a more, here in the United States when you go to a nice resort, And so you have these things, they're getting more technology, and it's starting to bring everything full circle.
Totally, yeah. I think that goes perfectly along with something we learned about in our class was something called the dialectic of the local and the global. And what that really is it's basically understanding like how we're our own person, but also part of like a bigger picture. Just like you were saying, like, you know, and again, I feel like it all really flows really naturally together. All of these concepts and ideas and stuff, going along with Lebanon and going along with the world and stuff like that, is just that, I guess, we have our own wards and our own, if we're going with the celestial perspective, our own lives and stuff like that. We live in these little communities, and we live in our little suburban houses and things like that. We have our families and our friends and everything just right here around us. But if we take a step back, there's so much more, so much more going on. And I think that is super important to be aware of. I guess some examples of the dialectic of the local and the global would be, like we talked about religion and stuff like that. Also in Africa, I'm sorry, not Africa, Lebanon, Africa as well. But one of the Millennium Development Goals that they are working on there currently is, of course, eradication of AIDS, HIV, and stuff like that. And I think, in the medical field, that's a very big, good example, I guess, of the dialectic of local and global. We have these vaccines and these treatments and things that are created in one area, and we're sharing this medical knowledge around the world. It's a globalizing force, as well as, it's taking it from the local level to a global level, and really helping, expand and helping people all over the world. So, that one person who was able to, or not, maybe not that one person, but that group of scientists that were able to get together and to create these treatments and things like that, on this very small local level, have been able to impact, millions and millions of lives. And so, I think that's another good thing to think about. Does that make sense? Does the dialectic of local and global make sense and stuff to you? Is there any other thoughts that you have on that?
Not really. I think maybe if I had one, just the whole idea of, very localized group like you're talking about, the people who developed these treatments for diseases or whatever, and then it's becoming global, just how that's helping maybe be the transformation from the globalization like 3.0 to maybe even more globalized, like a 4.0, where everyone's connected through all these different ways, not just businesses, but where people in countries like Lebanon are connected with people in the U.S. and are best friends with people in the U.S. through these means of communication. There's that example I know I've told you about before in the Philippines, the country I did for my development, and how in some of the villages to help with education there, they had like a couple computers just randomly or placed in these villages or towns where the kids could go and use the internet for educational purposes, and maybe even how the world will progress to where these places that individuals may not be able to afford computers, but people could donate computers for a community, and people could use those to connect and grow, and maybe the local, as far as the people donating or people that made those, will help the people in Lebanon or other countries become more part of the globalized community.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Talking about too, like innovation. So as you're a business major, I'm a communications major. Another question that was posed to us, I guess, was what innovations in our field would be most beneficial to our adopted country. So with my communications field and stuff like that, something that I think, and we've talked about this before earlier in the discussion about globalization and stuff, and how there are parts of Lebanon, like the capital city of Beirut, that are very modernized and definitely 3.0 globalization and stuff like that. But there's also places, especially like with your refugees and things like that, but there's also places more that are more less urban and more rural areas where they don't really have a lot of internet connection or any internet connection for that matter. They still like go down to the river or whatever to get water and things like that. Like they live in like small like houses with dirt floors and stuff. Like there's very primitive areas as well. So I think something that could help it further develop the entire country of Lebanon rather than just certain areas are those connections, those internet connections and things like that, allowing people to connect through social media and stuff like that. It's interesting because there are parts of Lebanon that are really like connected and stuff. And like I think I told you this before too, but I actually follow this girl on Instagram now who she's from Lebanon, and she is like a fashion designer. And I mean, I don't know if she's super high profile or anything like that, but she is very globalized. She like reaches out to other people. She has a lot of followers and stuff like that. And it's just very much to me like a great example of this like globalization and how, we can be connected to people all over the world. And I guess, I don't know, there was one other thing I wanted to say about that, but I mean, that's basically it. Is just, I think also like increasing maybe the media coverage and the news coverage of things that are going on in Lebanon. I know I'm not always the biggest consumer of news. I am more so than I used to be. But I don't see Lebanon in the news a lot, I don't, before this class, I didn't really know a lot about Lebanon at all. Like, I'd heard about it, but I kind of had to look up to see where it was on a map. So just, again, I think globalizing and helping the world know who they are and what their voice is and stuff like that, because there's so much that they have to say from what I've learned and stuff. So, yeah. Do you have any other thoughts or any other questions for me, I guess, about Lebanon or about anything that you've learned or that I've learned, I guess, about globalization, about my country, about what's going on in the developing world or anything like that?
I mean, we kind of touched it all, but I really liked what you were talking about, just like the way to make for your major communications, like how to get it more known about like Lebanon and just getting more coverage about those places,
Yeah.
Where right now all we really hear about a lot of developing countries is wars and destruction, but instead of that, it'd be nice to have news that wasn't about the negative in these countries, but more about the positive. And, I think a way that would help is by having internet connection in those places that they may not have it or may not have very much, so that way the children and people could write down what's happening so people understand, what it's like to be in their life, and
hearing like directly from the source, even rather than always even news sources. Sometimes like it's different in the news versus like directly from somebody. I think probably one of the greatest things that I learned throughout this class, and it's kind of simple, but it was really profound to me, is just that like there are people all over the world that are just like us. And I know that sounds almost ignorant and stuff, and as I served my mission on Temple Square, of course you know that, and was able to serve with sisters from all over the world, and that was something that I really understood from that, but it was further, I guess, driven home to me throughout this class, is that, as I studied Lebanon, as I learned about the people and the cultures and their families and things like that, and about individual stories and stuff like that. Like, I've never gone through a war or had to escape from Syria, escape from my country and find refuge somewhere else. And there's things that I definitely haven't experienced, but, there are people there who are very much like us, who have, experienced loss of family members, and I have experienced that and stuff like that, or that like fashion or like whatever. And so I think, I guess the whole thing about the developing world to me is just to recognize that that the goals that we have set as a country and stuff like that are to help individuals, help people and individuals, people who are people, not just these overall like glorified goals that we want to do because we're good people or whatever. But these are real people with real lives experiencing real things who many times need our help. And so I think being more globally minded is super super important. Well, I think that's everything. If you don't have anything else, I don't have anything else. So yeah, I look forward to continuing to learn more about Lebanon. I think that's something that it's really sparked my interest throughout this class. So yeah.
Thank you.